going to stand out because I'm kind of naked there, I feel like. 4 now, yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Hitman, take 4. And haunting screams, and I don't know what to think. But when it comes down to you, then it seems I believe. Sheets are gone, corners torn when the sunlight's my view. It won't escape tonight, no, not tonight, not you, not you. And haunting whispers and haunting screams, and I don't know what to think. When it comes down to you, then it seems I believe, I believe.
Little bit of gather.
Yeah, nice one.
Sounds great, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
No, I was saying because I didn't believe your amp could sound that good.
Okay.
You know.
I'm
Well, not flattering your amp.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a backhanded compliment, isn't it?
But you know what I mean? I didn't never. It's when you hear it live, as opposed to actually being mic'd up.
Yeah, you don't know what's
You
going
don't really hear the qualities of it until you actually hear it like in focus like that.
Yeah.
It's all mixed up with everything else.
That's
And
right.
that's-
Yeah. Individual microphone on. Yeah.
Still, it's got a blend. The two amps blend very well.
Yeah.
Because they're very different sounds.
Something we can work with. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Certainly, definitely we can make more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And that's what having two very different kinds of guitars as well.
Yeah.
I think.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, because mine's really basic.
Yeah.
Quite clever.
Yeah, and that again, it's a contrast.
Yeah, it's really sound.
Yeah, very
Oh
Be
no,
very
you can really
Yeah.
hear, like, you're playing lots of arpeggio, aren't you? You can really,
It has got that chime, hasn't it?
yeah, it really cuts through. which
You
is-
think? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
I
yeah.
stand corrected.
Okay. Marky Mark? Yeah. Okay. I Can't Trust You, take 4. One, two, three, four! Nobody likes to be lied to. And with the wheel of a footprint, she leaves the tatters behind. And oh, and I know I can't trust you. Garden and oh, and I know I can't trust you. Oh, and I know I can't trust you.
Yeah, so the clarity of everything, when we listen to playback, I was kind of surprised. I expected there to be more, like hearing his guitar on my bass amp, because I've done recordings before in small environments, and the crosstalk between the different instruments has been inhibiting to the end result. But this, I was actually very pleased.
Yeah.
with
But
how
it was played
clear-
back separately on
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
The
And-
separation's been really
yeah,
good.
yeah.
So,
And I would say this room, particularly the big room, sounds really good, especially for the drums.
Yeah, we're
There's
hearing
enough room for the drums to kind of make their sound without it hitting the walls and coming back.
because they sound
Yeah.
quite different in here.
Yes, they
because
do.
of how
Yeah,
they-
yeah. And they, when we rehearse in the small room, they sound really punchy and aggressive. But that's probably because it's so contained. That's yours, of course it is. Yeah. So it's a technique. You adapt to the size of the room, do you?
Yeah.
That's very good. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're
doesn't-
here.
No, he
We're here in
doesn't.
we're in room 2 at Bally's. We should probably say, and everything you said I think is right. We were a loud band, I would say, on the whole. We play pretty loud. Jess is trying to quiet us down. But we play loud, and it did feel like we could still hear very much individually what was going on. So we just had the one thing in all of our headphones, which was the vocals, just because they're hard to hear otherwise. And that kept us in, just like when we play live, when we play in a normal rehearsal time. So that was great. We were able to bring what we play when we rehearse, when we come to practice, and then put that down on what we did, which I think a real selling point for the whole 8-track offer that Bally's has.
But others just saying that once we got up and running, it was just we play. It's when we decided we got the take we liked, and there was very little. Once we got the instruments at the level we liked, and then they were on the 8-track at the level that machine needed.
Yeah.
It was very straightforward. And again, we didn't have an overly complicated monitoring system. You know, we could hear everything in the room, and then the vocals were just through the cans.
Yeah,
But we're
Which
not-
was fine, which is plenty.
We're not an overcomplicated band.
No,
though, are
that's
we?
true. We are kind of straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, when we listened back to that track in particular, it just sounded, although it's raw, you can see where it's going to go, like
yeah.
with a little bit of EQ levels and so on. I think it's going to sound really good. So I'm very pleased with how that went today.
I think
Yeah.
because it's simple,
Yeah.
you don't try and be too complicated, because really we're approaching this as a view of like demos.
Yeah.
So we know we're not we're not aiming for sonic perfection, and it enables you just to get going quickly and get everything down, and then we can listen to it and then argue how the song, maybe change arrangements and come in again for another session and re-record them, because it's very straightforward. Whereas if you commit to the hiring an interface or an engineer with an interface and a more comprehensive setup, shall we say, then you're already half a day of just setting up, and it feels like maybe a bit of an overkill at this stage.
For the price, which was affordable, I suppose, it would be a good little kind of catch up, see where we are,
Yeah.
get, anything from quality.
And what we would have at the end of it is we would have an honest reflection of what we sound like
Yeah,
live.
that's what I mean, for-
So if we're going to say to a pub or a club or whatever, hey, this is what we sound like, genuinely that's what it is, and
There's
so no
there's-
surprises.
Yeah, no gloss.
Yeah, exactly. No surprises. If they like it, then
Yeah.
they know what they're getting, and that's what they're looking for that night, and
Yeah.
that's the Today, in effect, we've got 4 songs ready to be mixed. And if we did a second day, I think we would be able to do probably more than 4, because we worked
Yeah,
out what's
absolutely.
going on.
Yeah.
So let's say we
Yeah.
did 6 tomorrow. Well, that would be 10 songs.
Yeah.
You know, kind of an album. You know, and there you go.
But it was also handy if the stuff was already set up, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because
It was set up the day before, and then we
Well,
could
yeah.
come in and sort of
exactly. And if you were going to have the weekend, then you could, the second day in, everything would be ready to go.
Yeah, that was
And-
yeah.
and, so you can basically, once you're warmed up, you're ready to go. So-
Book the place for the weekend, and
Yeah.
I think you can have quite an output.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could we do 12 songs over 2 days?
Oh, in 2 days? Yeah, of course.
Over
Have we
2
got
days, I
12
think we
songs?
could. We do. We had 12. We have to
Yeah.
decide what we're going to put on our first album.
I've been taking my time, wondering if I don't think I stand. Down, yes, man. I mean, yeah.
Come on, what's the matter?
I made a tiny little lyrical error, but no one would ever know. No one would ever know. It doesn't matter. It's fine. It still makes sense. It still makes logical sense.